Well, looming budget cuts are expected to be a major talking point on the campaign trail. That's because if Congress can't compromise on how to resolve the nation's debt problem, the result would be a sequestration, or about $500 billion in mandatory cuts to the defense budget over the coming decade. To break it down for you, the defense budget would be cut an additional $55 billion per year. Over $492 billion would be cut from the military over the next 10 years. We're looking at a 20% reduction of Department of Defense spending. So that's 100,000 soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen would be separated from service. Cuts to spending on military equipment means a loss of over 1 million private sector jobs. Now, this would start in January, and top officials say such drastic cuts poses a grave danger to the nation's security. But we all know that military spending in the U.S. is massive. So what would these cuts really mean? To answer that question, I was joined by Tim Kavanaugh, managing editor for Reason.com. Here's his take.
What it would mean, as you said, $55 billion a year is easily absorbed if your goal is to make sure that the United States is safe from foreign attack. I mean, even without sequestration, somehow we manage not to have enough security around our embassy in Libya. $55 billion a year. It's a few airplanes. It is, not even a submarine, which who knows what submarines are even defending us from anymore. It's absurd that we are in this situation where this is considered catastrophic. An 8.2% reduction. It's not. These are never really cuts. They're actually reductions in the rate of growth. So there is nothing to fear here. What we have to fear is if they do solve this problem, because we're just going to be looking at more growth, more debt, and more spending as time goes on. We got a $16 trillion debt in this country. More than 60% of all new debt is now being bought by the Federal Reserve. We know it's not even being bought by traditional bondholders. I mean, we have a huge spending problem in this country. And if sequestration is what we need to do to at least try to pretend to get it under control, then there's nothing to complain about.
Now, you're saying that, this might not be such a big deal, but we're hearing from people like Senator John McCain. He's saying that this could, quote, lead to an inability to defend the nation. We have Defense Secretary Leon Panetta saying that this could invite aggression. So a lot of, catastrophic scenarios that they are portraying. What do you think about what they're saying?
The scenarios are catastrophic because of the way that sequestration has been done. It's a thing that goes back to 1985 to what's called the Graham-Rudman-Hollings Act. And the idea is that if all of the different levels of spending, there are 8 large appropriations, something like that, if all those different areas of spending come to more than the Congress has already agreed is our spending limit for the year, and it's $1.2 trillion, it's a lot of money already on top of $16 trillion in debt. If it comes to more than that, then you sequester what's left over. You sequester the overage, basically. That's what it means. Over the years, as these things always do, they've added more and more things to the do not cut list. Social Security doesn't get sequestered. Lots of defense stuff doesn't get sequestered. I mean, the necessary defense stuff doesn't get sequestered. Your older viewers may remember back in the 1990s, there was a so-called shutdown of the government when Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton came to blows. They couldn't.
And it wasn't the end of the world, right?
It was. I didn't even notice it. Nobody noticed. I mean, I did not lose a minute of sleep. I didn't eat a morsel less food, and nobody did around the country. I mean, it was no problem.
Okay. You talked about this national debt. It's pretty bad right now. It exceeds America's GDP. So even if the sequestration does happen, does it come even close to really addressing the debt problem?
No. I mean, this is the problem, that we're even having this discussion, that we're talking about, the people talking about the congressional staffers having to be reduced or work, partial hours or something like that. Like, this is this big catastrophe that we're all looking at. And when we're looking at a much bigger catastrophe, I mean, fewer and fewer people want to buy our debt, and we are issuing more of it every day. And there is no serious plan out there. Romney does not have a serious plan, but even that is more serious than Obama's plan. The Senate has not even passed a budget in 2 or 3, 4 years, something like that. This is insane. I mean, we just cannot go on like this.
And, another thing that the Defense Department is saying, another catastrophic consequence of a possible sequestration is that there will be a lot of jobs lost, particularly in the defense industry. And they're saying that this could, create this domino effect and hurt our already fragile economy. Do you see that being a big risk?
Once again, older viewers may remember in the 1990s we had a big, what they called the peace dividend, when lots of bases closed and lots of contractors had to find other things to do with their time, and actually the economy boomed. Why are we having that discussion? The purpose of the armed services is to defend this country. It's not to create jobs. The military is not a jobs program, and with all due respect, I don't want to see soldiers, airmen, sailors laid off, but we're a long way from that. We might be talking about some contractors losing things. There was a scandal about that just the other day. President Obama issued these orders to contractors: wait till the election before announcing your layoffs. So maybe something would be happening along those lines. But again, this is not nearly as much. So we're talking
massive defense contractors like Lockheed Martin suffering, possibly.
Possibly suffering, yes. I have a terrible feeling that they will solve this problem prior to January.
You think so? You have your faith in Congress?
No, I have no faith in Congress. I don't want them to solve the problem. I want them to get to the fiscal cliff. We need to go off the fiscal cliff. We're not going to get spending under control in this country if we don't.
All right. Well, now, because of this looming debt crisis, this possible sequestration, we are hearing talk of the debt crisis. Do you think that it's forcing government officials on both sides now to focus on this national debt problem?
I hope. I mean, they should be focused on it, but what we're talking about is not solving the debt problem. What they need to do, if this is a problem, if we're going to get to this problem where they're appropriating more than the spending limit, they need to appropriate less. They need to do it the rational way, the way anybody else does when making a budget. You have $1.2 trillion to spend in a year. That's a lot of money. And if you can't get fixing the dome on the Capitol building or whatever it is that they're talking about, these big catastrophes we're going to deal with, if you can't get that within a $1.2 trillion limit, there's something wrong. There's something a lot more wrong than just the inability to work in a bipartisan manner to get around sequestration.
Okay, well, you're saying sequestration is not even enough, does not even come close to addressing this very dire budget crisis. What then needs to be done? Because it sounds like you're talking about massive, massive cuts.
One thing that could happen is we need to go back to what the original idea was with the sequestration, which was that everything gets cut evenly. You don't leave anything out. You put Social Security on the table. You put everything else on the table, and all of those things get reduced. Again, almost always in D.C., when people talk about cuts, they're actually just talking about reducing the increase. It's at the rate that you're increasing. I think that's what they define as a cut. So yeah, we need to get that out of our heads, and we need to get the idea that you're going to actually spend less this year than you spent last year. I'm doing it. I don't know about you, but most people out there are making less than they were a few years ago, so they're spending less.
That was Tim Cavanaugh, Imagining Editor for Reason.com.